Welcome to Loving Your Leftovers, the first tech talk of ever. So stoked that you guys are here. It's 12:01 and I'd say I give like one more minute and then we'll get started just to see who's gonna trickle in. But thank you all for coming on a weekday, on a Wednesday, during maybe your lunch hour where you had the choice to just kind of zone out and you decided you're going to learn something today. And as we wait for one more minute, just want to say that it's just like a truly an honor to be able to do this work with you all, and to be able to have these fun webinars and experiment with ways that we can communicate and share stories and conversations and inspire each other, really like inspire each other to do something different because I know that in this world it's not easy to see, it's not easy to be hopeful all the time about what's going on and how we can be a part of it, but that's what we do. That's what we do here is we try to create opportunities to be the solution. And that's kind of like a tagline at TEC. We want to be the solution. We are the solution. So with that, it's 12:02. Let's go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Tech Talks. And this idea was kind of created because my background in podcasting and emceeing. And I just thought, why can't we have a podcast style webinar, right? Because we have so many webinars going on and there's so many live streams that it was kind of like a presentation and a Q&A. And I thought, well, let's just have a conversation and broadcast that, right? Why not? So Tennessee Environmental Council, my boss, I want to give a shout out to CEO Jeff Berry, who has supported me and encouraged me to take on just new experiments, new projects, and he's really excited about this as well. So we're going to feature conversations with passionate organizations, innovative businesses, and dedicated individuals that are working to tackle our state's environmental issues head on, right? Um, and so my name's Maris. I am the Director of Communications and Community Impact for TEC. We're a nonprofit with a mission to help people and communities improve the environment for all. And we have programs that plant pollinator gardens and trees, and we restore watersheds. We host litter cleanups. We have recycling roundups, and we even have a composting program that shares educational information. And we also highlight our partners like Compost Nashville. So we hope that we can help all Tennesseans to do the things in their own lives, their own backyards, their businesses to improve our environment. And we want to support you all in doing that. So let's go ahead and get into why we're here today. We're going to do a quick poll before I introduce our guests. And let me see if I can figure this out. I want to also say for anyone that's new to Zoom, there is a Q&A little box down here on the app or on your computer screen. And that would be the easiest. You can type in the chat if you like, but it'll be the easiest to kind of filter questions towards the end, 20 or 30 minutes if you have some. For me, I will be the person reading them out. So that would be great. Let's go ahead and get a little poll going. We want to know about you and your experience, about your knowledge with composting. There is no right or wrong answer. We're so happy that you're all here, whether you're brand new, whether you got some knowledge, whether you have a lot of knowledge and or not, right? So we're just pumped that you all are here. I'll give you a few more seconds here. Let's see. All right, we got 53% participation, waiting for a few more. Couple more, we got 3 more. Let's see. 11 out of 13. Waiting on 2 more. 1 more. Let's see if we get it. Come on, number 13. Lucky 13. All right, we'll sit there. Looks like we have about 8% brand new, 17% some knowledge, 67% they have knowledge and they compost at home, but they want to learn more. And then another little 8%, they're the experts. So cool. We got a nice little variety, nice little range here. All right. It says share the results. Did everybody get to see that? Stop sharing. Is it gone off your screen? Did it go away? Okay, excellent. All right, cool. Oh, it brings me so much pleasure to introduce my dear friends at Compost Nashville, these rock stars that I have the pleasure to know, Catarina, Muschaweck, and Micah. Puncochar.
Hi, everybody.
Guys, these are some cool individuals right here, and I'm so stoked. Let's do this. Um, you guys are with Compost Nashville. I'm gonna put a little in the chat. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, who you are. Micah, you want to start? And I'm gonna put in the chat kind of a link to you to your website and everything else.
Sweet. Yeah, hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Micah Puncochar. I'm one of the co-founders of Compost Nashville, and I am a Nashville native, a father of two daughters, and I live in East Nashville. It's my little brief bio.
Love that. Catarina.
Awesome. Yeah, and I am Catarina. Great job pronouncing my last name, Maris. That's a tough one for sure. Muschaweck.
Practice.
I've lived in Nashville for about 12 years now, and I live in the Hermitage area. Before Compost Nashville, I was not actually super familiar with composting myself, but my background came from marketing specifically. So I've had a really exciting opportunity to learn a lot about composting over the last 4 or 5 years. And it's simultaneously more complicated and more simple than you might think for a variety of reasons. So I'm excited to get into that today.
Yes, thank you. And let's just hit the nail on the head. In a nutshell, what is composting, y'all? What's your tagline? What's your go-to?
Yeah, so composting is essentially the way that food and plants and everything naturally break themselves back down into the earth and create fertilizer and nutrients for new plants to begin growing. So it's a really delightful cycle that happens in the world itself, and it's something that we have interrupted. So.
You have anything to add, Micah?
No, I think it's great. I think the interruption part is what we're going to talk about today and what we can do to
Yeah.
keep the connection going.
And
Yeah.
Micah and I know each other from way back when I had the Zero Waste Trash Talk podcast. Your other co-founder, Beetle, he came and actually spoke at a meetup that I had back in the day. If anyone knows Zero Waste Trash Talk, that was me. That was just little old me trying to do something in the world, and highlight again, just how do we support the people and the organizations that are doing this work and be inspired to do it ourselves because there are no limitations to that. Anyone can do anything, anywhere, and this is where it starts. So Micah and I have known each other for a while. Micah, how did you get inspired in a nutshell? Quickly, you don't have to tell the whole story. I feel like anyone who wants to reach out to this man or this woman, please do to get in touch, right? And to get inspired or get more information. But how did you come up with this idea?
Um, yeah, so I'll try to do the short version for the sake of time. But I grew up gardening and knew the role of compost. And it was further, uh, really further highlighted in my just experience when I was in the Peace Corps in South America. I got to see people actually use compost in their growing in the fields in like A and B, like split experiments of plants with compost, plants without it. And so it was very much like, holy moly, this is amazing, right? Just the actual physical attributes of compost in the soil. Fast forward a bunch of years, I left corporate America, started a landscaping business, and noticed that all the yards in Nashville were getting smaller and and very nice and neat and proper and with very little room for that, unsightly compost bin in the back corner. And as I just talked to people more and more, it seemed to be this idea that like that could be a service that people would get into. Is that kind of a we compost for you service? So yeah, in 2014 we launched it, and I had two clients and a Toyota Camry, and that was the compost Camry, and then we started commercial service, and because somebody asked us, can you compost at our coffee shop? And Compost Nashville, it's residential and commercial took off from there. So
And highlighting the fact that you all are the service, right, in which you pick up the composting and you also provide education on it and you take that to an industrial site to be composted. You are not the actual composters. Is that the right term?
that's right. Yeah. So we're the service that makes it easy for your food waste to be composted, and we take it out to Ashland City to a facility that you guys might be aware of called the Compost Company, um, out in Ashland City. So really, really great that they are out there. As far as I know, there's only a few permitted composting sites in the state of Tennessee, and we're lucky enough to have one of them here
We
in
are
Middle
so
Tennessee.
lucky. Oh my gosh. Like that is insane that we have that, y'all. So if you don't know Compost Company, go check them out too, because we have this resource right in our backyard. And we live in
Yep.
Middle Tennessee. A lot of us do anyway. But if you don't, that does not mean that you still can't use this information and do some composting at your home or figure out where another business is that locally could service you or start your own, right? Or be like Micah and start your own. So let's talk about the landfill. Let's talk about what a landfill is, right? And this is something that I had a conversation with someone years ago who a grown man, actually that was when I was bartending. And he said, well, all this stuff is going into the landfill. It's all being composted anyway. And there was this misconception that a landfill actually composts things, right? Because it's going back into the earth. We're thinking, oh, landfill's a hole in the earth. And maybe can you all explain that a little bit about why a landfill is not actually composting and what's going on with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is such a common misconception. We get that at a lot of farmers markets too, where they're like, well, when I just throw it away, it just goes back into the soil. And unfortunately, that is kind of what we talked about earlier, where we're interrupting that process. So, one of the things that compost needs in order to be successful is oxygen, because you need those oxygen loving microbes in order to break it down in a really efficient way and also in a way that makes that material available for plants to absorb. But when you're sending it to a landfill, everything is really compressed and everything is covered in plastic. And because of that, you're creating conditions where oxygen is not present. And so instead of having these oxygen loving microbes breaking food down, you have different microbes that can thrive in environments without oxygen. But unfortunately, the byproduct of those microbes breaking food down is methane. And so methane is not usually released in a composting process where oxygen is present. You have aerated piles, but it is present in landfills where you're compressed and you don't have access to that oxygen. So it's interrupting the process. And then it's also that compost adjacent product that you're creating in a landfill. It can't just be taken out of the landfill and then used again to create more nutrients for more plants. So it essentially just completely goes to waste.
Right, exactly. And so thank you for clarifying that because that's a big misconception. And could you give us some idea of how much is actually going into the landfill now? Like I know I've heard over the years that's been like 30%, 35, and now 40. So I'm just curious if you have an updated kind of like stat visual for us on what's going in the landfill.
Yeah, so 40% of food that is purchased is wasted. So it's like you go to the grocery store and you buy 5 bags of groceries. It's essentially leaving 2 bags of groceries just like on the ground as you're walking to your car. It's kind of insane how much is wasted. And then of the food that is wasted, 95% of that, so the vast majority of wasted food is going to landfill and not being composted.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of room for opportunity there, guys. There's a lot of room. And it's exciting to me because I know that those numbers are kind of like they make me kind of like, oh, but it also shows that like we could be diverting all of this and there's opportunity there. Um, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the food cycle, right? When we go to the grocery store, as you were saying, I think that I, like many others, would go and not really think about where it's coming from or where it's going. We go to the store and we have this convenient, beautiful setting of, plastic packaged food that we can grab and we don't really think of, or at least I can speak for myself. I'm not always thinking of the farmer that, had, created this product, like where it came from in the dirt, grown, put into packaging, and then put on the shelves. And then we bring it home, like you said, we're cooking, we're entertaining, we're having fun, and we're taking all this stuff afterwards, and we're just a lot of people unconsciously throwing it into a plastic bag and it's going in a truck to the landfill, which we discussed. Like there is no way for that food to be separated out in the landfill and actually used in the natural process. So could you talk a little bit more, Catarina, about that food cycle that you told me about?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're so right. I even do it too when I go to the grocery store. I just see strawberries and I'm like, oh, cool. This is great. I'm just gonna take these. And I don't think about one, how long those strawberries traveled to get to that grocery store, which varies, but is often a long distance. So you have all of that, the travel that goes into it. You have all of the water that was needed to grow the strawberries. You have the labor that was needed to plant the strawberry seeds, water the strawberry plants, make sure that the strawberries are surviving and not facing blight or insects or any of those other things. And I think, when you are a gardener, you may experience those things, but the vast majority of us don't have the time or space or ability to have a garden. And so we're so disconnected from this, from everything it takes to get those strawberries in that container. And then when we're throwing that away instead of composting it, all of everything that went into that is wasted in addition to the money that was spent on those strawberries. But when they are composted, strawberries break down into the nutrients that they have, and those nutrients can be used to create more strawberries. So while it's better to eat the strawberry, if you can't eat it, composting it at least make sure that that's not wasted and it can be used to create more strawberries moving forward.
Yes, and I think you like that last detail too. Like if you don't eat all the food and you can't save it for some reason, it's still it when you compost, I know I'm so pumped up that when I'm composting, I know that I'm not contributing to the problem. It's like this beautiful release of like, okay, it's all right if I didn't finish it, you know? But I am encouraged to buy less because if I'm not going to eat it, then, I only want to have what I can eat. But
Yeah.
so
Well, and I was just gonna say there's some things too that like you're just not gonna eat, like bones and like coffee grounds and things like that. And those can be composted too. So it's like there's this inevitability of waste. Like, no matter what, something will be wasted. And so we might as well make sure that it's being used to create something new.
you want to jump into that a little bit about like what the components of composting looks like things that if you're composting at home, or if you're getting the service, like how that is different or the same, and like what you all collect to either of you if you want, whoever
Yeah,
wants.
I can jump in on that. When you're composting at home, typically you're going to want to have a good mix of what is in the composting world is referred to as greens and browns. Your greens are going to be your leftovers from kitchen prep, onions, carrot tops, the tops of peppers. If you have a garden and you're like de-stemming kale, then it's like the stems of kale. Those kinds of things are the greens, and those are rich in nitrogen. And then your browns are going to be that's something you're going to have to kind of collect over time. It's going to be um, old hardwood chips from like the tree guy that you flag down in your neighborhood, or leaves that you collect and kind of stash on the side. Those are going to be high in carbon. Um, and so if you think about it, like going back to what Catarina says, like every bit of the strawberry top or the onion skin and the fallen leaf or the mulch from the tree guy, that has so much value to nature, so much value to plants. And so when you combine those in a somewhat correct ratio of greens and browns, then the composting process takes takes place. When you have it at the perfect ratio and plenty of oxygen and all that, it can happen quickly, based on the oxygen available to those bacteria and to those microorganisms. But if it's not perfect, it'll still happen. It'll just take a little time. In a service like ours, which is pretty cool, since we do take it out to the compost company, and they get their temperatures up to over 140 degrees, and they have machines that sift and break things down. You can put meats, cheeses, bones, all manner of things. I always like to say if it grows on this planet, it goes in the bin, which is pretty cool. So it is very cohesive, and that's a little bit of the difference of a commercial composting facility and then composting at home.
Yeah, and so when you guys are picking this up, like what are some things that go into your bins? Like you were just talking, Katarina, about like bones, and I know that there's a rule of some sort around like bones and things like that. If it's in your backyard, right? Like if you're going to be composting in your backyard, you kind of steer away from that stuff. If you don't have like large property, or because it attracts rodents, right? Like it can attract animals, and that's kind of the one downfall fall of that, right? But
Yeah, it can attract creatures, and it also, if your pile doesn't get hot enough, you do have a small risk of pathogens that can be a little bit dangerous for humans to be around. And so, what's nice about those facilities that are permitted is they are required to get those piles to the right temperatures that kill the negative pathogens, but keep alive the microbes that are helpful, like Micah was talking about. So it's a very, very controlled environment, very large piles that can achieve that heat. Backyard piles often just can't quite get there. And then when you have like BPI certified compostable products and things, like you can see Maris in your background, that cup in the background is a BPI certified cup. Those also need more heat in order to break down than you would usually achieve in a backyard pile.
I'm so stoked that you pointed that out. That was kind of like my next place to go was compostable products, right? And like let's talk about that. Let's talk about how those began. Micah, I remember reaching out to you for something back in the day that was like, hey, I need some references or some recommendations because there's greenwashing happening out there, right? There's unfortunately a lot of companies that are not actually certified. It's called BPI certified.
Mhm.
And let's talk about that. What does that actually mean? The
Yes.
BPI.
Oh, go
So
ahead, Mike.
that's been tested to break down in a commercial facility with a under 12-week period, under 12-week time period. So these are made with anything from sugarcane. There's a company in East Tennessee that's making things out of grasses that grow in Tennessee, which is really cool. It's made out of corn, like polylactic acid, right? That's the PLA. That's the corn starch. It looks a
Plant
lot
plastic
like
that looks like
plastic.
plastic, but it's
Yep.
not. Yeah, that can be confusing too.
Yep. And it's the greenwashing is tough because there's a lot of things that'll say biodegradable. And people think, well, awesome. That's so awesome. Great. Okay, check. Got it ready for my, zero waste party. And that's cool. But it doesn't really meet any standards or qualifications that we're going to look for in our industry. Or there's like the brown takeout containers from the Thai restaurant that down the street, and it looks so compostable because it's brown, and in our minds it's like, right, it's like that cardboard, but it's got a liner inside that's actually plastic. And so, and it just that's the greenwashing going on. And I do think that the certified compostable single use material is a step in the right direction because we're so used to convenience. But I do think it's just a step, and I think there's going to be, better solutions in the future. But for now, it is the way to have a zero waste event or party or whatever it is to make sure you're getting certified compostable
Yeah.
material.
Thank you for that. Because yeah, I want to commend anybody who's tried and like didn't know, you know what I mean? Because it's the effort that matters and counts. And we don't know everything right off the bat. But as I've come to learn these different things, you start to recognize the products like, oh, this has got plastic lining on it. And now just so we know, like most people I think that know composting are doing at home and in their backyards, they're not putting that stuff into their pile, right? Because like you just said, like the BPI certified is going to be like you're bringing that heat all the way up and there's very specific processes to break that stuff down. If you're putting it in your backyard pile, like for instance a PLA cup, that's not going to break down very easily. Maybe not at all. I don't know. Like how long would
It's
that
it's not. It won't. I mean, I try it. I do it. I put them in there. And then it's like, 6 months later, it's like, I'm like, I got to put that in our green bin, but so it goes out to the place. Um, you can break down some of those takeout containers though, like the bagasse, which is a sugarcane fiber, like that'll break down, but the
plastic lined ones that we know because we are looking for these answers. Not everybody knows, it's not common knowledge, right? They're like, oh well, this is a company doing the right thing, but really there's the plastic lining in there. Would that be something that like someone a company like Compost Company would be able to break down in their piles? Because I mean, how do we filter things like that if it's everywhere, right? Like, and people are trying to do the right thing.
Thing we have recommended when folks have asked us like how to tell the difference of if it has a plastic lining or not is a tear test. And so if you have, this brown container and you try to tear it and it doesn't tear very easily, even if it does tear, but it's really difficult to, it's probably lined with plastic. But if you have it and you tear it and it's super easy, it comes apart really, really easily, that's how you know it's probably not lined with plastic. So that's sort of a good way to delineate that. One of the sources of contamination that we see a lot is ice cream containers. And I get it because they are paper on the outside, but it is that same thing where they're lined with plastic. And if you do try to tear a ice cream container, you'll find that it's really difficult to do that. So a tear test can sort of be a way to see if it has that plastic lining or not.
It's like 100% of ice cream. I feel like any colored line, like if it's paper, but there's colorful, glossy loveliness on it, it's probably plastic,
Yeah,
right?
oftentimes that's the case. Yeah.
And
That
it's
was
tough because
mind
it
blowing.
did used to be a wax coating, like not that long ago. Like the milk containers that a lot of us grew up with and stuff like that, like at elementary school and those things, that did used to be a food grade wax, and now it's plastic. So I see in the chat from Mary saying that compost bags made for compost containers are still in her pile, and that makes total sense. Yeah,
1 year later, 1 year
yeah,
later.
1 year later makes total sense. And likewise, so those are really that's the great example of it needs that heavy that high temperature. So to break down.
And that's where you guys come in, like if you take the first step of just wanting to compost and you just know you're like, this is something I want to start, right? It could be as easy as hiring these guys to come and do the service for you so that you can do it step by step, right? You can start doing it, at least knowing that you're diverting it, you're not contributing to the problem. And then as you go through it, you're learning about the process, you're learning about what goes into it, you're learning you get to teach your friends, right? People are going to see what you're doing and you're going to be spreading this awesome solution that is just like such a huge part of diverting waste from the landfill. And it's amazing what you guys do. I'm so grateful that, years ago, like when I met you, Micah, and that I had friends that were doing it, it inspired me to take the first step because it's a habit that we need to change. We're used to throwing things away. There is no way. That was the very first episode of my very first podcast, Zero Waste Trash Talk. It was called There Is No Away, because this idea that things just disappear, it's a fantasy. And when we start to check into reality, it doesn't have to be doom and gloom. It doesn't have to be a scary thing. It can be an exciting thing. It's an opportunity. And then there's companies like this, like Compost Nashville, that are here to help you. Um, so thank you for giving us kind of like the basics of how it works in your backyard and what it means to be a commercial and things that you can put in your bin very easily and not have to worry about the science or like the way that the browns and greens work. But you know what I thought was really cool when I first started composting was all the weird things like hair and lint and like dust or
Nail
like
clippings.
nail clippings. Do you have anything to add about that? I think that's so weird and cool, but like why? Why does that stuff go in?
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of what Micah was saying earlier of like if it grows, it goes, like hair is part of the human body and so are nails, and those technically break down over time. I mean, we're all compost at the end of the day, but
True. There's a company that actually composts human bodies. I don't remember what it's called. Charles, I see you on the chat. Charles White is a teammate here at Tennessee Environmental Council, and I think he was the one who told me about it. That there's actually a company that has some sort of process where you can be composted. And my mom was not a fan of this. She was like, ew, no, I don't, that's no, bugs will get in your body and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what is so wrong with that? I mean, she wants to be cremated and thrown into the ocean. Hey, mom, shout out to mom. I love you. Thank you for everything. Because she's the one who kind of instilled a lot of this curiosity in me and wanting to do the right things to protect the planet and human race because planet's good without us. But she was not a big fan. She was like, that's so gross. But when you think about it, right? If it grows, it goes. My saying is if it came from the earth, it can go back in, right? And that one might not be, with some nuances because Like it came from the earth, but how did it come from the earth, right? Naturally, hopefully. And that's like the easiest way for me to think about it. And when people ask me about composting or your experience with it, right? Like Katarina, you said that you weren't necessarily like or you didn't have a composting background when you started working for Compost Nashville. Like how has it changed your life and like how has it like inspired or encouraged you to like share this with other people?
Yeah, I would say it's changed my life pretty drastically. Just getting to work for a company that I know is actively like walking the walk and not just talking the talk and saying these things. Just it feels really good for my soul personally, to get to be doing that work every day. But before I worked at Compost Nashville, I tried to backyard compost and I had one of those little like plastic things where you can rotate it like this and it got really sloshy and disgusting. And no matter what I did, I just never really got compost. And so I was excited to get to learn more about like how the process works and how much of those browns, like the paper products and the wood, you actually need to make it successful. But then I started composting with Compost Nashville because it was low effort. Because I was like, oh, instead of having to figure all this out, I can just toss literally all of my food in my little green bin and then just put it outside and I don't have to think about it. And then I do have a little garden now, and getting the compost back is so nice. So it's like you sort of get to experience that magic of it going away and coming back. But then just knowing that it all stays local, it feels really good. It feels really good to do. And that's what we hear from a lot of our other composters too, is just that it's nice to know that you're not just throwing something into this abyss of a landfill, you know?
And yeah, a side note, like that process of composting, like like she said, it gets messy or whatever, and it can be not, it can be a little off-putting, but when you have somebody to come and do it for you, what do you have to say? Because I know that we want people to compost with you all, but what could either of you comment on someone who doesn't live within the area that can get your service? Like, what kind of advice or guidance do you have for them to like start composting because they don't necessarily have access to you all?
I mean, I think even people who do have access to us, I think everyone should compost and everyone should try. And if they want to use a service like ours, awesome, right? That's great, and but the main thing is to just to try and to do it. And I think just like I also firmly believe that if you have a patio or a balcony or a yard, you should also try to grow some of your own herbs and food and things. And some of the reasons why you should do both of those is to understand how hard it is to be good at those things. It increases your respect for farmers. Like when I grow like five pepper plants, and then some of them do well and some of them do not, and then I go to the farmer's market and I see all the peppers and I'm like, hats off, sir, madam. Like
Mind
you
blowing.
crushed it, Um, and with composting as well, it's important just to start. And I think just in general, composting is when we're throwing that food waste into a landfill. I mean, there's all these just very unnatural things that happen that Katarina mentioned. It releases methane, and when you are near a landfill, that's a toxic gas for humans. It also over a 100-year period of time has so much more heat trapping potential in our atmosphere. So obviously, for obvious reasons, a terrible thing to have more methane, and it's totally avoidable. Um, and not to mention that, but I learned recently that it increases something called ground ozone, and what that does is it inhibits vegetable production and plant growth. So nature gives you signs, right? Like if you overwater a tree, or you underwater a tree, it's gonna say, "Hey, you're overwatering." It's gonna die probably, right? Or it's gonna give you signs. If you pay attention to those signs, you can learn something. And similar with that, right? If you are burying your food waste, then it inhibits food from growing in that local area. I mean, nature's giving us these very obvious signs. And I think just someone putting a banana peel even under your mulch. I've learned from like old school gardeners that like if they're like, this is how I compost, they go out and they put it under their mulch in their garden and that's like a way too. It'll break it down. Like to just do it, even if it's in small pieces to try. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And what we're trying to do, right, is cultivate a community like this, and I'd love, we have about 4 questions I see in the Q&A. Just a reminder, if you guys have questions to put them there so we can go through them and we'll do that here in a few minutes. But um, I know for Tennessee Environmental Council, what our aim is, our goal is to give community members, Tennesseans, really anyone, inspiration to start small and just start. So
Hmm.
we do have, and I'm going to put it in the chat one more time. We do have a composting program, and what it basically does is it's an accountability program, really, for you actually report your submissions of how much you're composting on the website. It can kind of guide you on how to do that, and it cultivates a community. It encourages you all to do this and to know that other people are doing this and then we'll use that data. We use the data and the people that are in the community, and we share stuff like this, like awesome webinars and podcast style live streams. Excuse me, I'm coining it. It's mine now.
Mhm.
But we hope that this just it lights something, right? It sparks something to get your mind just thinking, okay, maybe I can just do this one thing, or maybe Compost Nashville, maybe I should, try to check out this service or learn more about it. So if there's let's do one kind of fun question to kind of like before we go into the Q&A. If you if you had one dream about like composting and what it looks like, what do you see? Like what is in a perfect world, like your composting world? What do you see?
Oh, I mean, for me, it's just as simple as trash. And what's wild is like we're saying this is a dream, but it's like it's a dream that is here, and that's what makes it almost nightmarish. Because it's like my dream is that you know how normal it is for us to just throw stuff in the trash. It's in my head, it's equally normal to throw stuff in the compost bin, and that's just a thing that we do. We don't think about it, and it's just part of our day-to-day life. So,
You have a similar vision, Micah?
Yeah, I guess I have two dreams, I guess. One would be that in the future there's like only two waste streams and it is like it's compost and it's metal or aluminum recycling. Sorry, metal or cardboard recycling. Um, and of course even cardboard can be composted, but it has a bunch of other lives that it can take after that. So I would love to see like that much like we look at like medieval medicine about like people like, putting leeches on wounds and we're like, oh, what a bunch of barbarians, that in 500 years, people can be like, I can't believe our ancestors had a category called trash that they buried like a bunch of
Yes.
whatever, like uneducated, whatever, just idiots. And so I would love that to be two streams in the future. And then secondly, with that, Tennessee and everywhere would need a very practical and easy permitting process so that in every county there's like 4 or 5 small processors where because it needs to be local because transportation is expensive, where like all the compostable waste can go. So, and it's a
Yeah.
perpetual loop, right? So you never run out of space in a composting facility because you compost everything and then it goes out to the landscapers, gardeners, farmers, construction people, et cetera, and you do it again and again and again.
I feel like you opened a can of worms with that permit comment, but I'm not we won't jump into that unless somebody wants to know, and you can put it in the Q&A. Let's go ahead and start with some of our questions, shall we? Mary, she said, I'm lucky to live in a property with woodlands, so my compost is a 4x8 fenced area. It's not covered, so the critters regularly, quote, help stir the pot. Question is, if I take my gallon countertop compost container out every day, I get fungus and gnats and fruit flies. How can I control that? Then the vinegar sugar dish soap traps. Any ideas on that? Because I know that's more of a like a compost backyard question versus.
Critters are pretty normal, unfortunately. But one of the ways to sort of make that better is to make sure you have enough dry materials. So like your cardboard and your paper and leaves and wood. If it gets too wet, you're sort of creating like a breeding ground for those creatures. And then if it does turn out that you have like too much larvae and worms that you don't want to have in there, which most of the time they're fine to have in there. But if you just get too much, you can use what's called diatomaceous earth, and it'll kind of suck away those creatures. So it's kind of intense. So be careful with how much of that stuff you use, but it is very effective.
Interesting. I have a bag of that, Charles, LL Charles. I have a bag of that given to me by a friend, and I had no idea what to do with it. I'm like, what do I do with this stuff? There's so many things now I know. Thank you.
Great drying agent.
Crying agent. Mary, thank you for your question, Mary. Appreciate you. And Charles actually has a question. Composting is such an easy and smart way to recycle our food waste and other organic waste materials, and pretty much available to anyone to do it right now. So how do we encourage more people to start composting? Well, you are the solution, Charles. It's you. I
Tell
know.
your friends, Charles.
Share this video. This is going to be recorded and this is going to go on YouTube. Let's share the crap out of it, right? Like let's continue to share these resources and ask questions. I think curiosity is super important. Like when people ask me how to speak on sustainability in a nice or like a compassionate way, like that's what I tell them. It's like it's more of a question. Like first it's leading by example. It's I'm leading my life in a very specific way where people know who I am. And in certain occasions, they might actually be a little nervous around me. And I'm like, don't be, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not judging my friends based on them not composting, but I am curious to know like why they're not curious, right? So, and then people ask me, well, how hard is it or what can I do? And so that's really, I think for me, key. It's curiosity and it's being the example. What about you guys?
I think it's educating kids is a big part of it. We talk to schools all the time. We go into schools. We actually compost at schools, which involves heavy PTA involvement of like working with kids from 4 on up about like what is and isn't compostable, and then they take that information back home and say, "Mom and Dad, why aren't we composting?" I think that is a huge that can make a huge impact. And I think it's normalizing it, being like, because we have these offices, for instance, they're like, well, yeah, we're not a restaurant, so what would we compost? And it's like, wherever a human drinks coffee, then there is an opportunity for composting. Wherever a human brings leftovers from home or microwaves a meal, wherever there is opportunities wherever we go. And I think to just normalize it where it's like, I would love to see it, that it is like right alongside of recycling. Like, yeah, we recycle and compost, or we actually compost and then we recycle because of this reason or that reason. And just to normalize it, make it like if you go to church, talk to your church. If you work in an office, get your office to compost. I mean, it's to make it just normal.
You have anything to add to that, Katarina?
Yeah, I would just echo that what y'all have said. It's really important to talk about it. And it's interesting because whenever I've chatted with kids about composting or talked to them about like which bin do you think this goes in, there's so much excitement and curiosity and a lot less of that like fear or nervousness, Maris, that you were talking about, where sometimes, and I encounter this too, where I'm talking with my friends and there's almost this weird like, oh, like, should I know? I don't know. I'm not sure if I know enough. And I think that if we can approach that, like you were saying, with that curiosity and that openness of like, not everybody knows, and why would we? Like, it's not a norm yet. Our society has drifted away from it. And so if we can take away some of that worry and fear and shame and replace it with a curiosity of like, what can we do that's different and how can we do that in simple ways. I think that'll help drive the conversation to a more open and interesting place.
Indeed. Thank you both. Thank you for that. Anonymous. Hi, I got disconnected. Does compost need to rest after composted before one uses it in the garden? What does it mean to rest the compost?
I think uh, if it's still hot, then yes, it would need to rest. So if you, for some, you are an expert composter at home and you've got a hot pile, then it would need to be not hot before it can go and be used in your garden or to top dress a vegetable bed or to spread around a tree. So, but if it is not hot and it is broken down, and by broken down, you're not seeing like distinguishable parts of a pepper or an onion or a carrot, then by all means use it.
Yes. Amazing. Cool. Like that. Well, you just said a few. My compost bins makes tons of compost. How do I use it all?
Yeah, I mean, if you have an at-home garden, that's great. If you don't, you probably have some friends who do, so you can give them your compost. And if they don't, there are a lot of organizations that need compost. We have a compost donation that we do once a year to 15 community gardens in the area. But there are places like the Nashville Food Project or the Village at Glencliff or Brooklyn Heights Community Garden. So you could Google like community garden near me and figure out which one is closest to you, and they probably need compost. So if you do find yourself with extras, and you have some kind of container that you can put it in, you can donate it.
You could even, could you sell it? Could you even sell it if you
You
want?
could. Yeah, that's true. You could just put it on Facebook Marketplace, you know?
There you go. I mean, there's a lady who comes to East Nashville and she does like $5 a bucket and she's got a big bunch of composted manure and you can top dress your grass with it. You can mix it in with mulch for your trees. Or yeah, you just throw it in your yard and rake it in and the worms will grab it and bring it back down to the earth. So
Yeah, thank you. That's perfect. Michelle says, I know machines like Lomi are not composters, but if you're mixing the food with at least a fourth part dirt, is that still better than just throwing the food away? Wouldn't it still reduce methane? I'm not sure if I understand that one. I know machines like Lomi are not composters, but hey, Catarina, we talked about this. Maybe we should just clear that up first, right? Like there are companies out there that are creating these, like Lomi, they're creating compost. They're saying they're composters, right? They're saying that you could just dump your food, whatever, press a button, and overnight, voila, you're getting soil. Could you kind of touch on that, like you did with me earlier?
Yeah,
And
those are tricky tricksters to get into.
you're right. Actually, it's just I don't know. I know that where you're going with that. Actually, yeah. What can you say about what you know with those?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that a lot of them, in a way, they're helpful because they can dehydrate and shred your food. And so, in that way, you're going from like a large, massive amount of stinky food to a smaller amount of not so stinky food. And so then, you can put that in a compost pile. You can also compost that with others, but a lot of the times I just kind of view them as an extra step that you don't necessarily need. If your intention is to compost and end up with finished compost, there are a lot of other solutions out there. There are some of those countertop compost companies that you can ship that material back to them. And so that's kind of nice because they'll take it back and they'll compost it. But again, it just sort of adds extra steps that I don't feel like are necessary.
Yeah.
Um, Micah, I don't know if you have any other
I
things
mean,
you
I'll just
want to add
add
on.
that like you said, Michelle, in your question, they are not composting machines. The only thing that is a composting machine is a composting pile that has the right mix of air, water, heat, microbes. Um, and like Katarina said, they can be a very neat and tidy step that you can take to compost. To be honest with you, I wish I had a dumpster-sized Lomi so we could dehydrate a little bit of all the food waste and have less transportation costs. To be honest, like to go in the weeds there, but it is still better than throwing it away. But if you then throw what is in the loamy into the trash, then it's the same thing. But hopefully this is going out to a garden or out to I know that the loamy people talk about like houseplants, top dressing with houseplants, and I think in moderation that's okay.
Amazing. I appreciate you guys commenting on that. We have two more questions, and before we do that, I want to just put a plug in here for something really special that Tennessee Environmental Council has been supporting and collaborating along with the Tennessee Composting Council. I'm wearing my shirt here. If you're not familiar, you can Google. I think we have a Facebook. They have a Facebook page, and they're kind of getting off the ground. But Ryan Scott, our filmmaker, photographer, Tennessee Environmental Council, longtime family member, he has created a documentary about composting. And I'm just so excited, honestly. I'm gonna put a link in the chat, but I wanted to see if maybe I could play the trailer for you all quickly so you can so we can watch it together real fast. Let's see. I need a thumbs up from one of you guys when I put it on and share the screen to make sure that it actually comes through. So give me a
I'll let you
Did you
know.
hear that? Did you hear that? Did you hear that at all?
Yeah,
The
a little bit of background sound. Yeah.
Okay, good. Good to know. Good to know. Like we got volume. Great, great, great. Um, now I'm
Well,
gonna
that I have seen it and it is really cute. And I love that he focuses on Tennessee specifically. It feels like a very localized documentary, which is nice.
let me see. Okay, so can you see my window here?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, now how to do this? Oh, where'd it go? Oh, it's on there. Okay, great. So now can you see it like now? Nice and big,
Hmm.
full screen? And if I push
Mhm.
play, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it and I'll just let it ride.
Welcome to Nashville, Music City, in my hometown. Take a stroll down the infamous Broadway, and you're sure to find something for everyone.
The sound is a little bit
It's the
strange.
crowds and the bedazzled swarms of cowboy boots.
Sound isn't coming through too great. Is that
Just
what?
spotty. Yeah.
Spotty. Okay, well listen, I tried. I wanted to show you all, but listen, I put the link in the chat. It's gonna be awesome. It's just a short premiere. And you kind of saw, right? Maybe we didn't see the whole thing, but you saw just a little bit about how he focuses in on Nashville Music City and the good and the garbage, right? The story of how there is good in the garbage, like garbage, trash, throwing things away. It's got this negative air around it. And it's like, let's start talking about how these are resources, how these are valuable materials, how this stuff it's good for something. There's the good in the garbage, and I'm so excited for Ryan. We hope that you'll be able to watch that and share that. But I did put in the chat. Let's go ahead and look up. Oh, this is an important question. Yeah, Micah, you said for biweekly pickup, $29 a month. Is that kind of like the most popular way to go?
That's for folks who maybe they live in an apartment, they don't cook a ton. And yeah, so we had a guest today just ask they had moved from somewhere else that they had that service and they were just curious about the pricing. So
Great. Yeah.
yeah,
And you can on compostnational.org, right?
compostnational.org. Yep.
There's going to be lots of information there, and I did post that in the chat earlier on. So if you have more questions, get on the website and reach out to them because they are full of knowledge, as you can see. Two more questions. Katie Racky says, "What supplies do we need to start backyard composting?" Maybe you can kind of give her some pointers there.
You know, it depends on the type of which way you want to go. Everyone has everyone probably even on this panel has their opinions about how to do it. My personal is to avoid the like the tumblers and things like that, and to get yourself 3 pallets and screw them together, and then start putting in food waste and browns. And the browns you can rip up cardboard if you don't have a tree guy that can give you wood chips or something like that. That's a nice way to do it because it does mimic you get sun, you get air, you get rainfall. But I do know that some people love the tumblers. And I like vermicomposting is pretty cool. That's using red worms. That
What do
is
you do?
way more
You
involved.
get a bunch of worms, you just throw them in. You're like,
You
spice
get
it
a
up
bunch
with
of
some worms.
worms and they will eat all your stuff, and but you got to make sure you don't put in certain things, but their poop, which is called worm castings in the compost world, makes the best compost in the world. So
Wow, red worm.
Composting is really cool. You do have to be careful what you put in there and keep your little wormies. It's kind of like having a pet. You got to feed your pet, but you can only feed your pet things that it can eat well. So,
yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah, and guys, I mean, this is just, there's so much information out there, right? Like you could Google this, you can get on YouTube. And I know you guys have a blog, you guys have
Yeah,
a
I
YouTube
can share that
channel.
link actually. We do have a couple of articles that talk about some of the things we've talked about, like BPI certified compostables, how to tell if something's compostable, 5 ways to compost in an apartment if you're curious about doing that. So it's definitely a helpful resource.
Amazing, because that's what we do. We're supporting composting. Even if you don't end up doing the service, maybe not right away, maybe you eventually do, but we just we support composting, period, right, guys? And I did put on here, or I put the link to our Come Post Your Compost so you can be a part of our program, but we also have some educational graphics and PDFs on our website as well. So if you're curious, you can hop onto there. The last question, which I know, Catarina, you kind of already touched on this, but Charles, I guess he didn't get to hear it. He said he heard Micah's stories of how he got in the business, but what's Catarina's? So I know how did you get, right? You want to touch on just like how you got connected maybe with them?
Yeah, let me try the Cliff Notes version because it would be my whole life story. But yeah, long story short, I grew up in a community that really cared about sustainability, and my grandparents were part of this conservation alliance. So I've always kind of had it in the back of my mind. But my career was in health insurance, and during the pandemic, that started crushing my soul more and more over time. And so I knew that I wanted to switch into something that would, be more uplifting and create more meaningful work. And as I was having like the height of this dilemma, I saw a post on Compost Nashville's Instagram that they were looking for a marketing director. And that's what my background is in, through my education and what I did before I dove into the health insurance world. And so I was lucky enough to be accepted onto the team and been here, I guess, almost half a decade now. So yeah, and
So
I'm
glorious.
so lucky. Yeah.
Oh, oh, there it is. There it is. You had to do it. I love that. It was perfect timing. Listen, guys, it's about to be the hour, and I just want to say thank you so much for all those who are here, anyone watching this later, and to everyone that's curious about composting. And like we said, we're in our perfect vision and world, it's just that composting is a standard. It's a normal standard that everybody partakes in and helps each other with, and we start to get more connected to the cycle, the food cycle, and how our farmers are doing it, and just paying more respect to that. And so with Tennessee Environmental Council having the compost program, we anything that we can do to help you on your journey, please reach out if you have any questions. And yeah, thank you, Micah and Catarina, for your time, for what you guys do. And I'll just say, if you can include, the environment in anything that you do in your life, right? Because I just heard your story, right? We were in the corporate world before, we were selling health insurance. There's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with doing that work because it's necessary. Yet you have an opportunity to include these types of things in the work that you do. And I know from my own experience, it's that personal connection to purpose in this world of like knowing that I'm contributing to the greater being of the future and generations to come. That has given me life. I wake up every day just shooting out of bed because I'm so excited about what I'm doing. And I think that everybody deserves that. So go out and compost, or just take a first step, or have a conversation, and that's all we can ask, is just do what you can do, focus on the good. And we're sending you all the support and love that we can. Thanks for being here. You guys, till the next time. Thank you
Thank you.
all. Take care, everybody, and go compost or take the next step, whatever that is.